Chapter 9. Salt in the morning. Izzi woke tangled in silk and shawl, last night's garb still clinging to her. The skirt's knot had loosened in the night, and the wrap top felt stiff where sea air had soaked into it. She stretched, ribs aching but less than before. For the first time in weeks, she felt, not whole, but on the way to it. She slipped from the bed, combed fingers through her copper-streaked hair, and pushed into the hall without thinking to change. Her feet carried her past a pair of merchants who glanced once, then twice, at her bare midriff and bruised collarbone before whispering into their cups. Izzi ignored them, cheeks warming only a little as she descended the stairs. The smell of fried bread and sea salt pulled her straight to the taproom. Horian's booming laugh rolled through the rafters, a sound impossible to mistake. Sure enough, he and Kaelin sat at a corner table, Horian gesturing wildly with a fork, Kaelin hunched over his plate like a man guarding rations on campaign. "Morning, darling," Hesta called from behind the counter, catching her halfway across the room. The innkeeper's grin was knowing, sharp as ever. "Your tall, mysterious friend is probably back at the beach if you're looking." Izzi's ears burned hot. "I wasn't," she began, but Hesta only waved her along, eyes twinkling. Izzi hurried to the table and dropped into the empty chair opposite Kaelin, pretending not to feel the stares she imagined trailing her. Kaelin paused mid-bite, fork still hovering, his brows furrowing. "That's what you slept in?" he asked, tone puzzled, as if trying to piece together why she'd wear silk and shawl for bed. Izzi glanced down, belatedly aware of the wrap top clinging at her ribs and the skirt still tied at her hip. She covered her side with a hand, then lifted her chin. "Comfortable, that's all." Horian leaned back in his chair, grin spreading wide. "Comfortable? Looks more like you're planning on a swim," he boomed. He lifted his mug in mock toast. "Best warn the gulls or they'll drown trying to keep up." Izzi smirked, playing it off with a shake of her head. "Maybe I am." Kaelin only grunted, still looking at her with that quiet, knowing edge that made her fidget more than Horian's laughter. The table was crowded with plates and mugs, Hesta's generosity clear even at this early hour. A skillet of fried potatoes glistened with rosemary and salt, a plate stacked with flatbread still steaming, bowls of porridge swirled with honey and berries, and a crock of smoked fish that Horian had already claimed as his own. Kaelin worked methodically through his plate, bread torn into neat halves, dipped into the yolk of an egg fried to perfection, while Horian seemed to be in competition with himself, telling a story as loud as thunder while chewing between words. Izzi reached for a slice of flatbread, careful of the ache in her ribs, and dragged it through the honey pooled at the edge of her porridge. The sweetness hit her tongue, almost dizzying after weeks of bland trail food. She leaned back with a soft sigh, closing her eyes for a moment. "Now this," Horian declared, slapping the table with a fist, "is why I'll never leave Cerulea's rest for too long. Stew at night, breakfasts like this in the morning, and a beach to sleep off both if you overdo it." He pointed at Izzi with his fork, a chunk of smoked fish speared on the end. "You see? You put on silk and smile once, and suddenly the world feeds you properly." Kaelin shook his head, biting into his bread. "Or maybe it's just Hesta feeling sorry for us after the week we've had." Izzi smirked into her cup of watered wine, letting the warmth of food and banter soften the lingering stiffness in her body. For a moment, it almost felt like the world had set its claws elsewhere. The table was crowded with platters, fried potatoes crisped with rosemary, steaming flatbread stacked high, smoked fish that Horian guarded like treasure, and eggs bright with yolk. Kaelin ate methodically, slow and steady, as if every bite were a ration to be measured. Horian, by contrast, was already on his second helping and halfway through a story about how he once outswam a shark twice the size of this inn. Izzi chewed her bread in silence for a while, her gaze flicking between them. Finally, she set it down, brushing crumbs from her fingers. "When I'm healed enough," she said, "I want to go to Rivenholt. I need a new rapier." Both men looked at her. She held their attention, steady. "The old one's Renlin's now. I left it with him. I'll need something of my own before we face what's coming." Kaelin nodded once, practical as ever. "Rivenholt's as good a place as any. We've coin now from the Griffin bounty, and the city's full of steel and scribes. We can get supplies and information both." Horian leaned back in his chair, smirk tugging at his mouth. "Rivenholt it is then. Loud city, good wine, and blades sharp enough to sing. I'll see you there. But once we hit the mainland, I've my own matters to tend. Can't follow you into every storm." Izzi's eyes softened. "We'd be grateful for your company as far as the docks." Horian clapped the table, making the mugs jump. "Then it's settled." For a moment, it was only the sound of forks scraping, gulls crying beyond the window, and the sea breathing against the shore. And in that lull, the three of them found a fragile sense of direction. Kaelin mopped the last of his yolk with a crust of bread, chewing slowly. Izzi pushed her plate away, half-finished, her thoughts drifting like the gulls outside. "I won't keep us here long," she said at last. 2 more days, maybe. That's all I'll need. Any longer and I'll feel like a charity case." Kalen's tusked mouth curved, but his eyes stayed steady. "You're no charity, Iz. You nearly died. 2 days is fair." Across the table, Horian scoffed, waving his fork for emphasis. "Hesta would house you a season and call it nothing. You're her favorite story now. An elf girl survives a griffin hunt, stitches herself together, and strolls back draped in silks." He leaned forward, grin wide. "You've made her ledger worth reading." Izzi flushed but kept her voice firm. "Still, 2 days." "Then 2 days," Horian said, raising his mug in mock toast. "Enjoy them. Eat until you're stuffed, swim until your scars sting. Once we step back onto the mainland, it's all steel, mud, and sleepless nights." Kalen clinked his mug against Horian's without a smile. "You don't make it sound inviting." "Because it isn't," Horian said, winking. Izzi let herself laugh softly, a sound that carried more relief than joy. For a moment, the three of them sat in easy company, the clatter of dishes around them, the hum of morning filling the gaps. Beyond the inn's open window, the sea shimmered. Izzi's eyes lingered there a moment before she turned back to her companions. 2 days. Then Izzi traced the rim of her cup with one finger, the thought forming before she could stop it. "I think I'll take a swim, or at least sit in the water a while, feel weightless for a moment." Kalen's brow lifted. "With your ribs?" She shrugged, forcing a smile. "I'll be careful. Besides, I've missed the sea." Kalen leaned back in his chair, stretching his shoulders until the joints cracked. "Then I'll come too. Sun on my back, salt in my hair, better than brooding in a corner." Horian snorted into his mug. "You two go play in the waves. Hesta's already claimed me for odd jobs. Apparently the mighty Horian Hale is fit for hauling barrels and patching shutters. Who knew?" He grinned, teeth flashing. "Try not to drown while I earn my supper." Izzi rose, smoothing the wrap at her waist. "We'll manage." Kalen followed, scooping up his greatsword to sling across his back. The pair stepped out into the salt-bright morning, gulls circling overhead. The beach stretched wide and white below the inn steps, and down the shore, just at the edge of sight, a lone figure stood with his boots in the tide, green eyes fixed on the horizon. Serious. Izzi's heart beat a little quicker. She told herself it was the sun, the ache in her ribs, the thought of cool water easing her body. But really, it was the questions she still carried. Questions only one man could answer. Kalen shielded his eyes against the glare and huffed. "Good day for it," he said. "Let's see if the sea can't wash some of this weight off." Izzi nodded, already moving down the steps toward the sand, her gaze drifting, unbidden, toward the man at the shoreline. The road again. Izzi stepped off the last stair and onto the sand, her shawl slipping from her shoulders. The tide rolled in cool around her ankles, then her calves. She didn't look toward Sirius, though she knew exactly where he stood, motionless as a statue against the horizon. Something in her chest nodded, stealing away the easy confidence she usually wielded. Charisma fled her like tide water draining from a pool, leaving her uncharacteristically timid. So she did the only thing that felt safe. She walked straight into the sea. The water climbed past her hips, her ribs, until it pressed against her bandages with a shock of salt. She eased herself back, arms outstretched, floating weightless, letting the sun warm her face and the tide carry her. For the first time in weeks, the pain dulled beneath the surface, replaced with the quiet thrum of her heartbeat in her ears. Kalen, meanwhile, had paused higher on the sand. His sharp eyes had caught Sirius at once. He stood for a long moment, weighing silence against duty, then trudged over through the surf until he was near enough that the hiss of the waves drowned out most of the world. Sirius didn't turn at his approach, but the faint lift of his chin showed he knew. Kalen stopped beside him, folding his arms across his chest. For a moment, he only watched Izzi float, the light glancing off her hair like copper fire. Then he said, voice low but steady, "I should thank you." Sirius's green eyes flicked to him, then back to the horizon. "What for?" "For saving her. For patching her up. For carrying her back when the rest of us couldn't." "You didn't have to, but you did." The half-elf was quiet long enough that the sea filled the space between them. Finally, he said, "It's no worry." Kalen grunted, but some of the tension bled out of his shoulders. "You're rough around the edges, but..." His gaze followed Izzi as she let the tide rock her, eyes shut against the sun. "You've got a good heart. Better than I gave you credit for." "I'm sorry for that." For a second, Sirius almost smiled, though it never reached his eyes. "Don't mistake what you want to see for what's there." A pause. "Tell me, can a single good deed ever wash away a lifetime of wrongs?" Kalen was silent a long moment, watching the tide roll in and out. "Maybe not," he said at last. "But it's a start." Sirius could continue to look into the horizon. A faint half-smile marked his face. Kalen considered what Sirius said, his jaw set. But even with the warning, he found himself less guarded than he'd been since they met. Maybe the half-elf wasn't so bad. Maybe. Kaelin let the silence linger, the tide lapping around their ankles. Then he exhaled, shifting his great shoulders. "I'll leave you be," he said, stepping further into the surf. "Got a date with the sea." He waded out until the waves broke at his waist, then struck out into the deeper water with the deliberate strokes of a man who found comfort in rhythm. Sirius remained on the shore, Kaelin's words echoing in his head. "Maybe not. But it's a start." He stared at the horizon as if weighing it against his own past. After a long pause, he huffed through his nose, half a laugh, half dismissal, and reached for the clasp at his collar. The shirt came off, scarred skin catching the morning light. He set it neatly in the sand, his bottle of rum placed atop it like an anchor, and stepped into the water. The sea climbed slowly, knees, hips, ribs, chest. Cold bit into him, sharp enough to make his lungs burn, but he didn't stop. He tilted his head back, staring at the line where sky and water met, and for a heartbeat he thought of swimming toward it, out and out, until the weight of the world finally sank. "Sirius?" Her voice snapped him back. He turned, water lapping at his chest, to see Izzi half floating in the shallows nearby, her hair fanned across the surface like copper fire. Her violet-gray eyes were on him now, her tone caught somewhere between question and relief. The horizon slipped from his thoughts, and he let the sea hold him where he was. Izzi floated a little closer, arms stretched wide against the gentle push of the waves. Her mouth curved, playful despite the bandages at her ribs. "Never thought I'd see you in the water," she said, teasing. "Doesn't suit you. You look more like the brood on the shore with a bottle type." One corner of Sirius's mouth tugged, though his eyes stayed steady. "And should you be swimming with half your body stitched together?" Izzi let her head tip back, the sun glancing off her damp hair. "I'm fine," she murmured, then flicked her gaze to him again. "What's this? Are you worried about me?" He waded a step closer, the water at his chest rippling with the motion. "Only that my work might go to waste if you tear the stitches." She laughed softly, the sound carried on the salt air. "Practical as ever." "Practical keeps people alive," he said. "And here I thought you didn't care," she shot back, eyes glinting. For a breath he said nothing, then finally, He paused, not knowing if he should continue his sentence. The surf rolled between them, cool and bright, as if holding the weight of what neither was ready to admit. Izzi drifted closer, letting the water cradle her body as her eyes lingered on the silver cuff at Sirius's ear. "The same as hers. The same as Valoran. I still have questions for you," she said softly. "About Valoran. About a lot." Her voice trailed, then steadied. "But not today. Today, I just want to live in this moment." Sirius didn't answer, but his gaze held hers, green fire muted by the waves between them. She tilted her head, hair slipping wet across her cheek. "So tell me, do you plan on staring at the sea forever, or are you headed somewhere?" His eyes flicked back to the horizon. "Rivenholt. I've business there. Someone to meet." Before Izzi could press, Kaelin's strokes cut through the water as he swam back, droplets sparking off his shoulders. "Then it seems the tide favors us," he said, breath even. "That's where Izzi and I are bound." Sirius's jaw tightened. "I'll pass." Izzi's smirk was faint but unyielding. "You patched me up. Carried me. Saved me. If you wanted to walk away, you would have already." She floated a little closer, voice light but firm. "So why not walk the same road, at least for a while?" For a long moment, the waves filled the silence. Finally, Sirius exhaled, a quiet surrender. "Fine. For now." Kaelin dipped his chin in approval. "We leave in 2 days. That enough time for you?" "No issue," Sirius said simply. The three of them let the water roll over their shoulders, the sea holding them in a fragile stillness. For the first time, they were not enemies, nor strangers, but something like companions, however temporary. Izzi couldn't hide the small spark of warmth that flickered across her face. The corners of her mouth tilted into something close to a smile, her violet-gray eyes softer than they'd been in days. Even her body seemed lighter in the water, shoulders no longer rigid with pain. For the first time since her fall, she looked like herself, mischief and relief tangled together. Kaelin swam ahead and hauled himself halfway onto the sand, water pouring in rivulets down his scarred arms. He cupped his hands to his mouth and called back, "I'm heading in. Horian wants me to help him with something or other at midday." "Don't drown each other?" Izzi laughed, shaking her head as Kaelin strode up the beach, already wringing water from his hair. She floated for a moment longer, watching the sunlight scatter across the tide, then turned toward Sirius. He was still waist-deep, gaze fixed on the horizon, unreadable as always. But Izzi felt something shift in herself, something reckless maybe, or simply honest. She swam over, the water rippling around them, and rose just high enough to brush her lips lightly against his cheek. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice low but clear. Then she turned, swimming back toward shore with an easy grace, her braid trailing like a copper ribbon in the water. Sirius stood very still, his eyes wide in rare surprise. For a long moment he simply stared at her retreating form, the sea lapping at his chest. His hand twitched at his side, as if caught between reaching for the coin pouch at his belt and the place where her lips had touched. "What am I doing?" he thought. "These are people. People's lives I swore I wouldn't get tangled in again." But the salt air carried her laughter faintly back to him as she stepped onto the sand, and his answer drowned itself in silence. Izzi padded barefoot up the beach, her skirt clinging damply to her legs, and for once the ache in her ribs didn't feel like a burden. The sun warmed her shoulders, and she let herself smile, an easy, unguarded curve of her lips. A new blade, a new road, a new company. The thought of where they might go next filled her with a reckless kind of anticipation. Cutting through the market street, she slowed at the sound of Horian's booming voice echoing from a nearby alley. She glanced over, already half expecting mischief, and wasn't disappointed. There he was, ostensibly helping Hesta haul a cask, but his help was two young women, both blonde, laughing at whatever ridiculous tale he spun. Kaelin stood nearby, looking both unimpressed and a little too attentive to one of the girls. Izzi arched a brow, biting back a laugh. Help Hesta or pick up women? Figures. And Kaelin, blonde of course. His one weakness. Shaking her head, she turned back to the street, laughter bubbling up from her chest. Her wit, dulled by days of pain and bandages, came back sharp as ever. She called out a playful greeting to a merchant sweeping his stoop, winked at a child staring wide-eyed at her silks, and traded a few light-hearted words with a sailor carrying nets across his shoulders. By the time the inn came into view, she was grinning to herself, her charm back in full force, her stride as light as the sea breeze that chased her inside. For the first time since Renlin's blood stained the dock, Izzi felt like herself again, ready for whatever came next. The inn's door creaked open, spilling warm light and the scent of stew over Izzi as she stepped inside. She wrung a last bit of seawater from her braid and found Hesta waiting at the counter, arms folded, grin already sharpening. "Well now?" Hesta said, eyes flicking to the damp silk clinging at Izzi's waist. "Out for a swim or out with your tall, mysterious friend again?" Izzi leaned an elbow on the counter, flashing her best sly smile. "Jealous, Hesta? I'd invite you along, but I think he broods better one-on-one." The innkeeper laughed, shaking her head. "You've got an answer for everything. But don't think I won't get the truth out of you sooner or later." Izzi plucked a grape from a bowl on the counter and popped it into her mouth. "Keep trying. You'll get about as far as Kaelin did resisting those blondes Horian found him." Hesta barked a laugh, the sound filling the room. "Our Kaelin? Saints preserve us. That orc's never looked twice at anyone since he set foot in this inn." "Looked more than twice today," Izzi said with a wicked glint, leaning back on her heels. The two women burst into laughter, the kind that carried and rolled, lightening the air around them. Izzi wiped a tear from the corner of her eye, cheeks aching from smiling. For the first time in too long it felt easy, like the weight of grief and blood had lifted, if only for a breath. "Feeling better, are we?" Hesta said at last, softer now but no less warm. "I can see it in your step." Izzi gave her a half bow, playful and earnest all at once. And with that she turned toward the stairs, laughter still bright in her chest, already looking forward to the road ahead.
Thank you for listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe. More chapters are on the way.